everybody, so today we are going to talk about shaving versus waxing and a little bit about both of them, aren't we, Kitty? We are not going to shave or wax the cat because that would be very mean. But today we're going to talk about shaving versus waxing, and I've been getting a lot of questions about this, so I really wanted to address it and tell you what is the difference between shaving and waxing and what makes it last longer. I'm not really going to go into ingrown hairs on this one. If you guys want another video on ingrown hairs, then be sure to post in the comments and tell me that you do, because if you guys don't want it, then you're not going to get it. But this is just what I know about shaving and waxing. I'd love to know what you guys have to say, and I guess we'll get started. So first we'll say, what is shaving? You guys probably do this in the shower, and it's where you take a razor or something and you actually just cut the hairs off the top of your skin. Now, shaving doesn't hurt. Why? Because we're just removing dead keratin. The hairs on our skin is the same on the hair on our head. It's the same as our nails. It's the same as those little KP sugar bumps. It's the same as cysts in our body. Not cystic acne, but actual cysts. And that's just dead keratin. Keratin is like this hard substance that the body naturally produces. It's what our hair is. It's what our nails are. This hair in our body is dead keratin. And the keratin is not alive. That's why it doesn't hurt when we cut it. If we cut it, it would be really, really painful if it was alive. But it's not, so we're fine. So, to kind of explain this further, I drew us a little diagram. And I hope that you guys can see it. But I'll kind of take you through how this works. So right here, this right here is the bottom of the skin. This right here is the top of the skin. This is the layer of the skin that we can see right here, skin. And here are little hairs sticking up. If we look really close in our body, everywhere around our body has little hairs around our skin. So here's the skin, and here's a couple of hairs. Now these hairs, just like the little hairs on our face that get clogged when we have pimples, come out of a pore. So here's the pore on the leg. Now right here, here's a sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland is that little gland that causes acne if it's overproductive. Now the sebaceous glands are so small in the leg, or in other areas of the body that's not a huge problem, so it's really, really small. If this was a pore on the face, the gland would probably be much bigger, especially if you have acne, then your glands are much bigger and they pump out much more oil. But this is just a tiny little sebaceous gland. So here's the hair, and this is where he lives. He lives inside of the pore. And at the very bottom is the papilla. That's kind of like the food and water for the hair. So right here, this is the dermis. This is the very, very bottom of the skin. It's where collagen is. It's where if we don't have enough collagen, we get wrinkles. Down here, this is the bloodstream. So what happens is that blood comes around and it nourishes these little hairs. It talks to the papilla and it says, hey, we'll give you some food, da-da-da-da. So this little hair can start to grow. So now what happens when we shave? When we shave, we're taking a razor blade and we're cutting these hairs right here. We're cutting them right here. So that way our skin looks like this and it's smooth. But when we cut these little hairs, what happens? Look at how much hair is left underneath the skin. We can't really get to that hair, can we? Because it's underneath the skin. So in a couple of days, this hair is going to grow a little bit more because it's still being fed by the papilla, and we're going to have another hair grow back. So that's pretty much what shaving is. It's cutting off this top layer of the hair and almost giving it a trim, but we're not going inside the skin. It's relatively painless. If you do cut your skin, it can be kind of difficult. And what happens is that sometimes you get ingrown hairs with shaving or razor burn, etc., etc. The other option for removing hair is waxing. And waxing is taking a very thin layer of wax or a glob of hard wax and applying it to the skin. If it's hard wax, they just rip it off. If it's actual wax, they apply it very, very thinly. They put almost like a paper or a Pellin cloth down, and then they rip it in the opposite direction of the hair growth. And that removes the hair for much longer. Here's why. So when waxing, what happens is that they put a very, very thin layer of wax all the way down here. So if you can imagine just a very thin layer on top of the skin. When they put the paper on and they rip it off, what's happening? Unlike shaving, they're not just cutting. When you have the wax rips this hair out from the very, very bottom, the papilla. So when you remove that wax and you completely rip it up and remove it all, it takes this hair from the very, very bottom all the way out. So instead of just cutting the top, we're taking it all the way from the very bottom and removing it completely. So now, unlike shaving, when we just cut off here, shaving, it just has to grow back that much and we can see it again. With waxing, it has to start all over again from the very bottom. So this little papilla, if it's still there, has to create a new hair. It has to take all the time to grow and then come back up. Now, there are instances that are very, very common where pores will actually have a couple hairs in them because the pores have a natural cycle. So there might be 2 or 3 hairs in there and you get the longest one, the longest 2, and you still have one that grows up, which is why it's important that if you wax, to wax regularly. But the reason that waxing is different than shaving is because with shaving, we're just cutting off the top bit. With waxing, we're pulling it all the way out from the very, very bottom. Those are the main differences as to how shaving and waxing work. And like I said, the hair has different growth cycles. You know what I mean? So sometimes there'll be like 3 different stages. In one pore, you could have 3 different hairs. One that's really long, one that's kind of short, and one that's just starting to grow. So one really long, one that's kind of short, and one that's just beginning to grow. So when you wax, it could take off this one. Now when you wax regularly, those hairs start to grow at the same time, so that way they're all the same length, so that when you wax them they come off completely and your wax lasts longer. But waxing can cause ingrown hairs, but ingrown hairs are more with shaving, but we'll talk about it in another video. So those are the main differences between waxing and shaving. Now we're going to talk about what lasts longer. What do you guys think? If we're going to cut the hair here at the top, it's going to take 2 or 3 days to grow back. Now, if we rip it out from the very, very bottom, that hair could take 2 to 3 weeks to grow back if you get them all out completely. So generally, waxing lasts longer than shaving. Especially if you're on a regular cycle and you get all those hairs to be the same length by waxing regularly, you take them out, they're not going to grow back for quite a long time. So what's better, shaving or waxing? That's kind of hard because it depends on the individual. Also, waxing is generally a little bit more painful than shaving because with shaving, you're just giving yourself a haircut. With waxing, we're actually taking each little hair from our body and pulling it out from the source where it is alive, so it kind of hurts a little bit more. Honestly, in my opinion, it is not that painful at all. I'm fine with it. And the more you wax, the more you get used to it. So I'd say if you're interested, maybe you should try it. But it really depends on the individual and what your pain threshold is. Also, if you have darker skin, if you're from darker ethnicity, you need to be careful because we know from the scarring video that if we tap on our dermis and if we upset our dermis, if we upset this dermis down here, here's the dermis, if we upset that, we get a scar. So you guys know that if you wax and you have darker skin, what could happen? This could get really irritated, the dermis, and it could start scarring and cause pigmentation. So if you are of a darker ethnicity, make sure that whoever is doing your waxing applies HQ, which is hydroquinone. That's something that will stop kind of that pigmentation, that discoloration from happening, so it prevents that for you. So if you wax and you're of darker skin, make sure that they put that on or that they have that, so that way you don't get any discoloration. So again, it really does depend on the individual. Also, waxing is generally more expensive than shaving. Shaving is just a little razor. I've gone to places that charge $100 for a wax, which is kind of ridiculous. There are places that are cheaper, but overall you have to find out what works for you. What works for your lifestyle, what works for your pain threshold, and things like that. Is there something better, waxing or shaving? Not really. Waxing does last longer, shaving is less painful. Waxing can cause pigmentation, but shaving can cause a lot of razor burn. So it really depends on the person. I'd say if you haven't tried one or the other, that it might be a good idea to just to kind of step outside your box. Just make sure that you go to someone who knows what they're doing. But those are just kind of what I know about waxing and shaving, and I tried my best to answer your guys' questions. So let me know if you agree or disagree with anything. Let me know if you have ideas for waxing or shaving, or if you agree differently, or any ideas or suggestions that you may have, or if you know how to make waxing less painful. You know, sometimes you can apply pressure and it'll be less painful. Or, you know, if you exfoliate before you shave, it'll be less razor burn. Let me know what you guys know. Let's all post in the comments and share our ideas. So let me know if you have any additional questions about waxing or shaving. I hope that this video helped, educated, and entertained you guys. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Love you guys. Bye.